Jackie Ruegger works at Monroe College. She believes in the mission of the college and makes it a point for students to succeed in their careers. Jackie shares her incredible career and how working in small PR companies helped her develop skills that deliver results. Hi, Jackie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank,
Fantastic, thank you.
thank you so much for coming for this interview.
Oh my gosh, it's always a pleasure to talk to my alma mater.
Oh, it is our pleasure to really talk to you. So, could you tell me your career journey?
Sure, like a lot of people, I fell into public relations. I did not grow up dreaming about writing press releases. Never happened. But I did grow up just 10 miles down the road from Six Flags Great Adventure. So as soon as I was able to start working, that's where I went. And as luck would have it, I worked for a concessionaire and I did very well, became a supervisor at the ripe old age of 15. So by the time I was 18, ready to go to Rutgers, I was convinced I was going to be a business major, right? Because I know business. I was a supervisor of a photo concessionaire at Six Flags Great Adventure. And then they told me about the math component to the School of Business. And I said, well, that's clearly not going to work for me. I'm more of a words person. I'm not a numbers person. In fact, math hates me and I kind of hate math. So I started to take some intro to communication type classes. And the dean at the time, I think his name was maybe Dr. Bud, if I'm not mistaken. We had a conversation and he says, well, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, well, I don't know, but I like to write and I like to do this. And he says, well, why are you not pursuing public relations? And I said, well, I don't know. What is it? Tell me a little more. And so he kind of really mentored me a little bit in the beginning and kind of got me on the right track. So I started to take more of those sort of courses and I just took to it like a fish to water. I loved it. I just loved absolutely everything about it. So when I earned my degree, I was one of those folks. There's a lot of us out there, first generation college student. I really didn't have the luxury of doing internships. I had to work. I had to work through college. I had to work all summer.
Mhm.
So when I graduated, I really didn't have too much in hand in terms of professional expertise or experience other than my coursework. And even then, I knew that that's not really what employers are interested in. So I was very fortunate. Yes, I'm going to tell you this is how old I am. There was an ad in the New York Times. A small boutique PR firm was looking for someone to do a 3-month externship. They
Mm.
had landed some big project and they needed a few more hands on deck. So I said, well, let me do that. That's like an internship, but just after graduation. So I went through the interview process. It was a very small firm. I think there were 10 people there at the time. And they explained it was a giant rollout for one of the national soda companies was doing a big benefits rollout. And they needed my help with that. And I said, well, okay, that sounds kind of interesting, maybe, but it'll get my feet wet. So let me do this. I was hired. I never touched that account, but I was able to parlay that 3-month experience doing other odds and ends for them into an entry level position with that firm. And I was like a sponge. And I was there for, I think, 6 years, and I learned absolutely everything I can. And the reason I was able to do that is I had a fantastic boss who really mentored me. The owner of the firm really, really took the time, especially with the entry level people, to share his knowledge and show them the ropes and give them the flexibility to explore things that are of interest to them. So when I was ready to move on from that position, I was so much better prepared and equipped to take on my next role, having done so much in the corporate space at this little tiny firm that now it's got over 150 people and they're doing quite well. But I knew them when they were little.
That's pretty cool. Wow. So you really worked on developing your skills because your boss gave you the opportunity to do that.
I'm very fortunate, and I'd love to pat myself on the back and say that it was a deliberate choice I made, but it wasn't. My decision to go to a small boutique firm absolutely shaped the course of my career and helped me advance a lot faster than had I gone to one of the big ones. And we all know who they are, big, big firms. But there is a burn and churn mentality at some of them that you have to be worried about when you're an entry level person, because they will just work you, work you, work you, because they know that if you give up, there's somebody right behind you ready to take that seat. And so it
Right.
can be a little bit difficult in the public relations field to feel like you're where you need to be and feeling valued and appreciated if you go into a really big firm right away. because then you can feel just like a cog in the system, and you don't want to be a cog in the system. You want to be making an impact and learning as much as you can and working for great people who want to take the time to help model you basically and form you into the person you want to be for that next role that you're going to take. Very few people in PR start with a company and stick with a company for a very long time. I've made a few jumps myself, and it's not uncommon. But because of that,
Hmm.
employers sort of know that, you know what, we don't really need to invest too much time and energy until they're maybe 2 or 3 years into their career. If they're still here, then we have them. But so it's just something to be mindful of. I was just very blessed that I landed where I did when I did, because I really think it made a difference in my career.
I see. I mean, that is pretty cool. So what I'm really getting is to don't be afraid to go and jump into the smaller companies because you'll be valued more over there.
It's
Mm,
true. I mean, there are certain things I did get at one point in my career. I don't know, maybe this is 10, 15 years in. I worked at an agency,
mm,
and it was a pretty decent mid-sized agency. And I worked for this one person. And because I showed, certain skill set and I had an aptitude to do certain things, my supervisor let me do those things. But then other managers heard that Jackie was being allowed to speak to clients directly or do this or do that. And that's not what we do when somebody's at that level. That's not part of the job description for that title. And so he honestly had to go to bat with the management committee about how ridiculous it is to not use a resource that can do the work well simply because her title isn't the right title. If
right.
that's the case, promote her, and then nobody can say anything. And that's what they actually did. They promoted me just to keep everybody else happy that I wasn't being allowed to do things that were outside the scope of my job responsibility because I showed an aptitude to be able to do them well. So those are the kind of things that you have to think about, because you will find them in the really big companies. In the smaller companies, it's a little bit more of a roll up the sleeves and get the work done, and
Mm,
and a little more entrepreneurial in spirit that way. So again, it just opens up some opportunities that may not necessarily be there for you at some of the really big agencies right away.
I see. That's interesting. I mean, that's a very interesting story as to like you worked so hard and you showed so much skill that you were promoted because, hey, this person is just skilled and
Because
they,
my job description had to match. So
yeah,
that's what happened. I was very lucky. I'm
that is
like, thank
very,
you very much. I'll take that promotion.
yeah. So that, I like that. I like that a lot. And also, working in a smaller firm will allow you to see the more business side of things. Well, you'll get to learn on making the business work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have a line of sight on so many different things, but equally important, when I worked at that agency, I had at any given time maybe 4 or 5 different clients
Uh,
that I had to work on every single day, every single week. So I'm worrying about insurance consultants. I'm worried about banking consultants over here. And oh, by the way, here's a photography client. It was a real weird mix of different things that you worked on. One of my good friends, when I got out of school, went to work for one of the big firms, and all she worked on every day was Evian water. And I
mm,
remember saying to her, "Well, that's great, but when your time there is done, do you have to now go to Perrier because that's all you know? That's the only all you know is the water business."
yeah,
Whereas I had my toes in a lot of different little ponds, and I learned an awful lot because of that. A lot about business, a lot about finance, a lot about investment banking, all sorts of different things that I was exposed to very early on because of the culture of the firm where I worked. You had
right.
to be that kind of a flexible person.
Yeah. So to gain a competitive advantageous skill in the PR would be to go work for a smaller firm because you'll be more competitive in the longer run.
I can only speak to my experience, and I definitely think that for me, that was the right way to go, even though I didn't know it at the time.
I got it. But it sounds like you also had a lot of fun in like handling multiple clients.
You know what? I was really blessed. I was really blessed. The firm was very selective in who they would represent.
Mm,
And because of that, everybody that we worked with, they had integrity, they had a real product to sell. Like the saying is, you can make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, but you don't want to have to make the sow's ear as well, right? The
yeah,
company needed to have something compelling that you were going to market with, whether it was a product, a service offering, whatever it was. There had to be something real to it, because when you're calling reporters and you're representing a brand, it's your relationship on the line as well. And that's, because of that, I was very blessed. I've only gone on one job interview from in my entire life, and that was the one that I did right out of college for that externship, my entry level job. Every single job I had since then, I was referred to by the person doing the hiring by somebody who knew me. In the first case, it was a reporter at the Wall Street Journal. I mean, talk about a feather in the cap. That's not the worst thing in the world, right? You're 5 years into your career, and the Wall Street Journal is recommending you to an employer. And then from then, this my boss at that agency and I kind of started our own company for a little while.
Mhm.
And then one of my clients at that company said, like, why don't you work for us directly? And I said, well, you've never really asked. And so they asked, and that's what brought me to the college. So that's how my journey started on 42nd and Fifth Avenue in New York City. And now I'm working for a college up in the Bronx and New Rochelle, New York.
Wow, that is so cool. I love your career journey where it's like, I mean, you've developed purpose in working for a college because I mean, you literally brings futures to life for students.
I'm very blessed here too. It's I live in Central Jersey still. I'm a Jersey girl through and through. Doing the George Washington Bridge every single day, that takes a whole lot of strength and character, I have to tell you. But because of the mission of this college, because of the work that we do, because of the impact and the outcomes that we generate, it is so worth it. I go home exhausted at the end of the day, but I know I made a difference. And that to be able to say that at any point in your career is just so rewarding. It's just incredibly rewarding. And that goes back to what you and I were talking about a little bit earlier today about passion and finding that place that you want to call home because you like the work, but more importantly, you like the people, you like the values, and you like the mission. What is it they're trying to accomplish here? How do they want to differentiate themselves? What's important to them as an employer, and how do they treat their employees? These are all critically important things. It can't just be about the work itself, the type of opportunities you get, but is this a place that feels good to be at? Do you want to be around these people every day because you spend an awful lot of time here, Monday through Friday, even if you're doing some remote work, you know, it becomes like your second home. And so you really don't want to settle for something that even when you're interviewing, something feels a little bit off. Trust your gut. Just
Yeah.
trust your gut. Because I'm telling you, when you find the right place, you know it. You just know it. Something just clicks and you feel like it's a place where you can get to that next, whatever that next milestone is in your career. You'll know it when you find the people that can help you get there. And you'll also know it when you find the people that are going to try to block your way.
Yeah, I understand that. That is a great outlook, especially the being able to make a difference. That is priceless. You
It
nothing
really is. It really
nothing in the
is.
world can really exchange. Like you would give nothing in the world to change that.
No, I tell you, if you ask me sort of what one of my career highlights would be,
Hmm.
honestly, it is where I am right now. I have the distinct privilege and pleasure to be the MC for commencement every year at Radio City Music Hall. Let
Wow.
me tell you, there is nothing in the world like stepping out on that stage and seeing those beaming faces in front of you of all those graduates and their proud parents and family members behind them for the biggest day in their life. It is just something incredible. And I get to say that I am a spoken word artist who has performed at Radio City Music Hall now.
That is epic. I mean, wow.
It is. It is. This will be my fourth year doing it, I think.
Wow. So I do want to bring the next part of conversation to about what skills would you say that you have developed in particular along your journey that bring a lot of value to your work?
Well, you have your technical school skills, right? Your writing skills, your presentation skills, all those technical things. And as important as they are, I really think it's emotional intelligence that can make the difference between a good employee and a great employee, especially in public relations, right? We're in the business of influencing and promoting and getting people to see things in a certain way, a certain perspective, right? That we'd like them to have and share with us. You can't do that very well if you lack empathy. If you can't put yourself in the receiver's seat and understand how they're going to hear your message and how they're likely to respond if you take this approach to delivering it versus this one. And that's as much about the words that you use as it is the tools that you use to deliver it, the modes of delivery, if you will. So being able to empathize with others, to be able to think about not only how this is going to react, how they're going to react to something, but how it's going to look at the light of day, right? We always say when we are talking about, especially crisis communications, which I've done a lot of in my career, don't say anything you don't want to see on the front page of the New York Times. Don't say it. Don't put it in writing, and don't say it, not even off the cuff, because you just never know. And you know, I always have that little devil's advocate role of mine. Like, what could somebody say to take us down a notch if we say X? What could somebody come back with, you know, to us with if we say Y? And to be able to sort of have a comprehensive look, because you can't control, as best we do, and as you know, we could struggle for hours to put together the absolute perfect press release. But if somebody has an agenda and they want to say something that's counter to what your message is, they're going to take their shot, right? Depending. Not so much if you're Evian, right? If you're representing Evian and you say the water is cold and it's delicious and refreshing,
Yeah.
you know, maybe somebody will come back to you with that. But with some of the things that you do when you're in a crisis, let's say that there's, you know, you've just announced the company is being bought and there's going to be layoffs. Well, you know, you will get locked into a bit of a battle, especially when lawyers are involved, and lawyers are always involved when there's a big crisis, right, at any kind of a company. You know, to make sure messages are delivered the very best, most ideal way given the circumstances. You know, the lawyers sometimes will say to you, we can't say that, we can't say that, we're not saying that. But the most empathetic thing to do, especially when there are people involved, is to give them answers to the questions, even if the answers I don't know right now. We're trying to figure that out, and we hope to have something for you by tomorrow. Generally, lawyers don't like that sort of an answer, but it is the one thing that allows you to keep your integrity and to protect your trustfulness. Being a trusted communicator is the bread and butter of our business. You know, if you lose face with your stakeholders, whether they be reporters, whether they be employees, whether they be customers of your brand, whoever that is, once you've lost that trusted communicator role that you have, then the rest is just downhill. And everything that you're going to say at that point is, you know, gets lost by the wayside. So, you know, having that emotional intelligence, having the right skill set, having the confidence to speak clearly and accurately, and to know when to stop speaking is so important in our business.
Absolutely. Being transparent and being authentic is what I'm hearing.
As transparent as you can be, because sometimes you
Yeah.
can't open the kimono all the way and show them everything.
Yes.
And a lot of times it's because what you think it might be the situation today can change very dramatically in the space of just a few hours. So it's, again, knowing how to find that right balance, but always being genuine, always being authentic, and never trying to spin.
So, well, that sums up my questions. I really like your advice too. You know, it's very insightful. Uh, this interview has been nothing but more than a joy for me to conduct.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure for me too. As I said, I'm always happy to talk to Rutgers.
Thank you. I mean,
It's been quite, I mean, listen, I was there in the early 90s. I graduated in 91, October 91, walked the following June, whatever it was, May. And when I drive through campus, because I still live kind of local, it is just overwhelming how much the institution has just grown and expanded. And you know what, much like the PR industry too, you know, when I look back at the things I did my very first year, you know, on the job, you know, some of the tactical things that I did,
yeah.
it's night and day. It is just night and day.
Well, thank you very much for your time. I
My
mean,
great pleasure. I'm really looking forward to speaking with everyone in a couple weeks. And who knows, maybe I'll be hiring by then.
oh, I mean, that's a great opportunity I see coming. Um,
Have a resume. If you want to work in the Bronx or New Rochelle in the higher ed sector, have your resume ready, because I'm always looking.
got it. Well, I'll pass it on to everyone I know too.
Fantastic.
So,
Thank you so much. This was a great pleasure. And
thank you.
as I said, I'm looking forward to getting back to New Brunswick in a few weeks.
Can't wait to see you.
Terrific.